Hello and welcome everyone back to another episode of
Not Fighting.
It is the Not Fighting Podcast, and I am Tyler Bishop.
And I'm Jena Bishop.
Also a bishop. We're related. Also quarantined together during the coronavirus pandemic.
Married. Let's make sure people don't think it's something weird's happening if we're married.
Yeah.
I took his last name because of marriage.
Yeah, you did. I made you. I submitted you with my last name.
No. You guys can watch videos of us sparring. It's not true.
So we hope everybody's been enjoying the podcast so far. One of the things that we've talked about quite a bit is just like, you know, we there's all these things that pop up in jiu-jitsu, like blue belts quit all the time. So we do a podcast about it. Yeah. We do all these different kinds of things. And, you know, one of the ideas is that, like, just try to keep things fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes fun things. I mean, jiu-jitsu submissions are fun, I feel like.
They're fun. They're fun if you're the person putting the submission on.
And that's what makes them good, too. Like, if submissions were something where, like, you never were on the receiving end of it, where it's like, man, getting submitted sucks. It sucks. Mm-hmm. And if you were never on the receiving end of that, I don't know that it would feel so good when you're on the delivering end of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's probably a very, true statement.
I think when I first started training, I remember, man, I can't even remember who told me this, but they were like, don't worry, you're not going to submit anybody for a long time, so just get used to that. And I just remember thinking to myself,
it's probably a Harbison.
It might have been a Harbison. And they were like, and I just remember submitting somebody like probably 2 or 3 weeks into jiu-jitsu.
And then you got real cocky and you're like, I'm good at this.
I remember thinking, like, at the time, like, I want to say it was 3 weeks because I want to say I remember that where I was like, I don't know, maybe that's a record or something. They said, I'm not going to do it for a while. 3 weeks in, I'm getting people, you know? Like, this might be a record, like the most, like, white belt fought ever.
Yeah, I can see you having that. Like,
but
we probably talked about it because I wasn't training at the time, so you probably came home from training and was, like, so pumped about it and told me all about it.
The guy that I submitted, like, actually started at the same time that I did, and it was an arm bar, I remember. It was my very first one ever.
So Rob Miley.
It was not Rob Miley. I do remember me and Rob Miley, like, doing this thing. We got in this sidebar. Rob Miley and I got in this thing for a while wherever we were doing heel hooks where we couldn't open the closed guard, so we'd just jump up in the air and, like, throw our legs around the other person and reach back for a heel hook.
Yep.
Because when we started training, like, our instructor was actually a black belt in Sambo, and so we didn't have to wear pants or anything like that.
I mean, you were the classic, which a mismatch tops in, like, color. So you'd wear, like, a different color top and bottom because, like, so you worked with, like, a karate guy too at the time, and he said it was really cool. He's like a Kempo karate dude, and he's like, that's the cool way to do it, you know. And you did that a lot because it was allowed, which it's not cool. Like, it doesn't look that good. And it's funny
our
because
instructor would do it back in the day.
I know, but what's funny about that is that it's just like going back to our very first episode with, like, the ugliest skis.
Yeah.
We had a comment from my dear friend Emily. Yeah. In Winnipeg.
Shout out to Canada.
I mean, Canada sucks. I'm sorry. Come here. I'm just joking. We love Canada. I don't know. Anyway, but
the 51st
that was one of the things that said she commented that's the most egregious thing you could do was with a mismatch, and I told her that you did that on the regular.
Yeah, on the regular. And not only that, like, we had this thing where it was like it was fine to wear, especially in the summer, wear, like, grappling shorts and then, like, a gi top.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you would
just don't do no gi grappling. Just wear your gi top and no shorts.
But it's like that was just acceptable, like, as if it was like a summer outfit.
Because it's like a Sambo thing.
Yeah, well, it was okay in Sambo, and I just remember thinking at the time, like, it's way easier whenever you don't wear pants. I'm just not wear pants most of the time, you know? I just took, like, a big setback there where it's like, when the guy has pants on, you can, like, grab them and everything. Anyway,
moving on. We're going to talk about some of the nastiest or dopest submissions that we have seen throughout history, probably in competition. So,
I would describe them as brutal because most of these are fairly violent.
It's violent. It's like one of those things where you watch it and you're like,
But it's one of those things, like, we were, like, going over the list of things that we had talked about, and like we were kind of like looking at some of them, and like even looking back at them, we're like, oh,
it's so bad.
you know. And most of these, like, there's none here that are like, I would say, bad blood. You know, like there's none here that were.
Well, I mean, it's not like that's like something I wouldn't even consider. It's not like like an ill will. It's like you're just trying to submit the person. You know.
Yeah.
You're just doing your job.
And most of not most, all of these are in the heat of competition, so that's and usually pretty high stakes here.
And we do know that there's like a lot of other submissions and things that have happened that are very brutal, but we don't really want to like bring light to those, like people getting like spiked on their head and like things like that, because it's just, I don't know that, like, number one, that's not legal to do. So if that happens in a competition and somebody gets hurt, like, that's very serious.
Also not street legal, you know? It's like,
there's
lights on the bottom of your car. Remember when people were doing that all the time? Putting like lights on the bottom of their cars and stuff?
Yep.
Anyways, the first one that we have on our list, to me, sticks out, is significant, because I remember the entire pyramid in Long Beach reacting to this, and it's a female match kicking us off.
Oh yeah, when Tammy Musemeci, I don't even know how to pronounce her last name really, and Michelle Nicolini, that was insane, because it was Tammy's like first year at black belt, right?
Yeah, it was her first year at black belt.
She was in the finals, and she was doing awesome. She was in the finals of the Worlds, and she was doing awesome. And she's fighting the legend that is Michelle, and it was a really, really close match.
It was. I remember it going back and forth and being like. This is pretty intense. Like, Tammy has this thing, like, she might be able to win. And then I remember right before the submission happened, like, she gave up too many points. Like, I remember it started getting away from her a little bit.
Yeah, because I think that was one of the things that I'm like, I can't believe you let this go. Like, there's no way you can come back and win this. Like, you're down by so much, and there's not that much time left. And I was like, why is she doing this? Like, I can't believe it. And it was like, but it was also kind of baller for her to, like, just be like, I don't care about my shoulder and my elbow.
Well, the submission was she got her...
She had the arm pinned behind the back. So Michelle's foot in the arm, pinning it this way. And then Michelle took her arm and was pulling it behind her.
So Michelle's on the bottom of the guard.
Yeah. First, shoulder, like, dislocates. Then elbow, like, because it's like shoulder lock, then arm lock, right?
Yeah.
And then elbow, like, comes out. And...
I can't. Did Tammy tap or did the
I don't
referee
think she
stopped it? Right?
I don't remember.
I think.
Well, we should rewatch it, but
we'll
y'all
have
should
a picture
rewatch
up
it.
here.
Yeah.
The thing is what I remember
because
most
I feel
about
like
it.
The time
I remember
finished or
I
something.
remember the referee saying stop.
I remember because I think Michelle was like talking to the referee, like it's like it's just out.
And I just remember Tammy just having like wide eyes, like just like kind of stone cold, and I was like, that's baller. And then like. The referee stopping it, and I just remember Tammy's arm just kind of like
it was just
floating.
Oh yeah, because it was in the wrong way.
And I just remember everybody going oh like that, you know. And then Tammy's dad ran down on the mat, and I was just like, oh, this is insane. Like what a gangster. And I know after the fact she said something to the effect of, I can't remember exactly what it was, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think she said something like, it wasn't like she was like, I'm not gonna tap. It was more just kind of like, I think I'm fine, and then, you know, like, it escalates.
And then you're not fine.
Yeah.
And then after it's already dislocated, you're like, well, it's not going to get any worse than this, so just keep fighting, you know? Like, I think that's kind of a lot of people's opinions about this, like, where the submission goes to where it's, like, too far. It's like, well, I already, like, that joint is gone. So if I can keep fighting, like, maybe I have a chance, you know?
I remember getting my foot tore off in a tournament at Brown Belt. And I remember it popped the first time, and I remember thinking, like, well, it's popped. I mean, now it's fine. And then it popped the second time, and I remember being like, all right, now you're going to pay for that. This is going to be tough to fight the rest of it. And I just remember the third time, and it just, like, completely coming out of socket and just feeling like, all right, it's done now. Like,
I can't stand on this anymore.
And I just remember trying to walk off the mat and I just remember jamming my foot in the mat because I couldn't, I was dead footed. I couldn't even move my foot anymore.
Which is kind of like one of the other submissions that we have on the list.
I was going to say.
Yeah, that just happened last weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually not the one I was thinking of.
But last weekend with the Vinny
Magalhaes and Craig Jones.
And with that heel hook. And, right away, Craig jumped on the heel hook, and he had it, and we were watching it, and I'm like, oh my God, his leg is, like, facing the wrong, like, his joint, it looked like his, like, knee, like, had come, like, out of socket.
It was like
I don't know. It just, I'm like, your body shouldn't move that way.
And
right?
I remember thinking, like, I saw it on the internet. Somebody had said, basically, like, Vinny Magalhaes says leg locks don't work on him, but Craig Jones proved the otherwise, and, like, blah, blah. And I was like, Jenna, we have to, like...
we have to watch this. He's like, we have to watch this thing. And I was like, oh, yeah, like, that's happening. I forgot it was happening. And I thought you were just meaning, like, we need to make sure we tune in. But it had already happened.
It was on Chael Sonnen's Submission Underground. It was on UFC Fight Pass. So we fast-forwarded through those. So sorry if you were on that card and you were like, why didn't you watch my match?
We watched Boogie stuff.
Oh, yeah, we did. We watched Boogie's match. But then we were watching the Craig Jones Vinny Magalhaes match, and right away, like, Vinny got caught in a heel hook. He didn't. Yeah. I mean, he didn't look to be.
I mean, he didn't look like he didn't show any sign of, like, pain or anything, and the heel hook came on, and it was nasty.
And then after that, they kind of, like, talked for a second, and Craig kind of, like, looked at him
back and forth, and I want to know the whole conversation.
And then he gets caught again. Yeah. After they talked some more, and then it looked brutal, and Craig, like, kind of let go, like.
Like, what? It's one of those things, it's like, when it doesn't even matter. It's like, you get in those scenarios, and if something pops, and you feel it, like, I've been there in training, where it's like, you pop somebody's arm on accident, or, like, for me, it's been more, like, feet that go, and you just, like, freak out, and you're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, because you know that that's bad, like, it was bad, yeah. But, like, Vinny wasn't tapping, like, Vinny didn't tap. He kind of just, like, at the, like, just kept fighting. And then it was, I think you realized,
couple minutes later, he was just kind of like, yeah, man, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he just, I mean, who knows how bad that knee is, but, like,
yeah, I don't know.
You could see it in the things. It's bent the wrong way. Like, I guess he's never tapped to a leg lock, or is his leg lock.
I mean, he's obviously super flexible, like.
I do remember earlier this year, you and I had a chance to train with Craig a little bit, and I just remember, like, him showing the setups and also training with him a little bit, just how tight those heel hooks come on, like, how smooth he is into those, and then also understanding, like, I mean, if you were to ask me, like, how easy is it to heel hook you, I'd say pretty hard. I don't have either ACL, and my legs, like, have a lot of dexterity in them, and I just remember feeling like there's no wiggle room with his.
Yeah. But I feel like it's harder to knee bar you than it is to heel hook you. Just because of that.
Don't tell the people, babe. Please. But speaking of
leg locks don't work on you.
Yeah. So speaking of leg locks, one of the worst ones that I've seen in terms of, like, this one really reminds me of the Musemeci one, is it's really whenever the submission is let go of that you're like, oh! And this is the Homolo versus Patrick Gaudio match from Worlds a couple years ago.
That is, like, anytime I think of, like, the most, like, submission, I don't even know how to, like, there's not a word for it. The thing that makes me, like, is, like, that Homolo thing. Because his foot was, like, hanging. And it was at Worlds, and it's like, I mean, it's the finals, right? So it's like, who cares about your foot? Was it the finals? Yeah, it was the finals.
No, it was the semis. It was the semis because Felipe Pena was on the other side of the bracket. So I think because it went to a referee's decision, and I think Homolo was like, if I can just get over this decision, like,
then Pena's like the champ.
Or Pena's the champ, or Pena gives it to Master.
Yeah. So I think that was the reason that he let it go, is because knowing, like, oh, my student and my, like, teammate is on the other side in the finals, and so that's a reason that you can let that kind of go that far.
But the submission was a toe hold, right? So, like,
yes.
The thing that shocked me about it was Gaudio jumped on this toe hold, and Gaudio's a really violent jiu-jitsu. Like, I would describe his jiu-jitsu as violent.
Yeah.
And, like, he got the toe hold, and Homolo even, like, did one of those, like, it's not that
it's
bad.
Not gonna work.
It's not going to work on me. And
which, guys, we all know, like, when you do something, it's like you are actually in some danger. Like, we all know that. Just defend it.
I was Sean Williams and I were commentating both, but I happened to be on the so there's two mats at the time because the semifinals. So they're actually over on the other mat. I'm actually calling another match. I can't remember what it was, but I just remember, like, looking over because I knew it was, like, the end of time and just being like, whatever I was saying on the mic, like if you go back, whatever match was going on at the same time, I just go, oh, like that. I couldn't help myself.
You can't because like when he like let go of it, like you like it was like time ran out or whatever, and you just see this foot like just not in the right position
because he dislocated it.
Yeah,
and I remember at the time like there was
which is
a lot
probably
of,
better than like.
Yeah, I mean they said that like it's
know.
better than breaking. It's like to actually have the foot dislocate so that it's just out of place. And to Romulo's credit, like he got up and he like, I mean obviously he can't stand on it, but he's like, it's fine.
No big deal.
My foot's fine. This is how my foot is. Like, this is how my foot is, guys. And then, like, whenever they gave up the referee decision, you could tell he was genuinely like, I felt like I won it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And to me, that's the mark of like a real, like somebody
like
that's
a true champion and a true competitor, you know?
For sure.
Like, and I think that's like what this, you know, most of these submissions are going to like pay tribute to is like people who are like fierce competitors because you're not going to tap and you're going to give yourself every opportunity to come back and win, right?
And speaking of fierce competitors, like there's no one that like I would say is like more legendary fierce than Hinzo Gracie. And so this one like transitions into the field of MMA, but like one of the most classic like brutal submissions of all time was the Sakuraba Kimura on Hinzo Gracie.
Yeah.
Because Hinzo's elbow clearly dislocated.
It's like anytime you see somebody's like joint like move in a way where it's like it's not supposed to do that,
and you can tell that,
and you can see
it's in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
it's particularly brutal, especially whenever somebody just completely poker face. Like Hinzo was like, don't stop it on the count of my stupid elbow.
like,
you know,
I'll pull it back into place and we'll keep going.
And what's so interesting about it is like, you know, that was a really brutal submission. There was a lot of controversy between the Sakuraba and Royler Gracie match because Royler got caught in a similar Kimura, but it got put behind his back. But Royler's like notoriously stupid.
He's so flexible. It's insane.
It's insane how flexible he is. So Royler, like, you know, you could say like, oh, he was caught or blah, blah, blah. It's like Royler was actually fine. When Hinzo, you can see like his elbow gets dislocated, and he's like, don't stop it, I'm fine. And then it's like, like, does he know about his elbow?
Yes. And that's one that, like, you know, I didn't watch live, so, like, I don't have, like, a natural, like, gut reaction to it, but you watch it and you're just like, oh, my God, because you hear the stories of, you know, these legendary matches and, like, these rivalries and stuff like that, and it's just, like, a very, like, classic, insane, and I think in most of these we're like, shout out to these competitors, like, not tapping and, like, you know, just
and I would say,
like, is it the right decision? I don't know, but
I would
for
say
them,
in most
it
cases,
was the right decision.
This isn't like a decision about like I'm not gonna tap because like I have the principle of not tapping. Maybe that's another podcast at some point.
Yeah.
But like
no, because these people are definitely like not.
It's like I'm trying to wait to the very last second because I don't.
You're going to give yourself every opportunity to win the match.
And it's like the buzzer goes off, and you're like, "Up, it's out." And then, like you said earlier, like, I mean, my arm's already broken. So.
The damage is done. How many? There's like one time where I was competing and I got stuck in like an esteem lock, and I just and my ankle popped and it was really bad. And I remember I tapped because it was like it was bad. But then afterward, I'm like, you know what? Like I can keep fighting after that. Like so if that's like the worst that's gonna happen, if it pops and then I can get out, I need to just let it go.
I need my ankle to get looser. Like the breaking part's a good thing. It gets me out.
To me, like that was like my mindset afterward. I was like, man, I'm mad at myself for tapping. Like I could have kept fighting. Like it was fine.
Speaking of people that like are kind of notorious for not tapping, AJ Agazarm.
Yes.
So there's a bunch of different matches
there's
out there.
There's probably a million different like
where there's matches out there where he gets out of like arm bar, like he definitely doesn't tap the arm bars.
Oh yeah.
And like he'll get out of them and then go on.
He
and win
doesn't
the
tap
match.
to like anything, right?
Yeah, and so the one that we decided for him that was the most brutal was him and Gary Tonon at a Fight to Win match a while back, where Gary catches him in a knee bar and. It looks super tight. You can see the leg get kind of bent backwards.
Yeah,
and then
it looked nasty. And then what's funny is like he's the guy, the ultimate like play it cool, like talk to the referees, tell the crowd, I'm fine, no big deal. You can't do this thing. He doesn't have it. That kind of thing. And then like after he like got out of it, after his knee had obviously been like messed up, then he stands up and immediately like leg buckles.
Yeah,
and it's just like, ooh.
It happened twice. Like,
Yeah.
I remember like watching the match and like 2 different times just walking, you can see the leg just buckle. And a guy with no ACLs, like, I've been there. You know what I mean? Where you can't control the fact that your leg just doesn't have that stability.
Yeah.
And that's both a mixture of both the ACL not being there and then just also inflammation, because it's like it's just trauma to the knee.
Yeah. That one, I mean, that one was I think that was one of those things where I was like watching it and I'm like like, I don't know, I don't mean to say this, but like kind of laughing at him, like, oh, you like want to play it cool and you think that you like just like didn't get submitted, but it's like obviously you can't play it cool and you just like your knee buckles. I'm like, yeah, like that's what you deserve. And I don't mean that like in a bad way, like I don't know how you can mean that in a good way.
You gotta,
but just like I don't know,
I
like
think you expect a certain amount of humility, and I think you see that with guys like Hamelo has talked about that before, like getting the ankle torn off. You have to just be like, hey, listen, like it was not my intention, and you know, it is what it is. But you know, I mean, when you're a fierce competitor, that's gonna happen.
Yeah, and then afterwards, just being able to like pay credit to the person is like, yeah, they caught me, they did a good job. Like, there's something about that, like that kind of mutual respect. But like when you're gonna be like, oh no, he didn't have it, it was fine, and it's like, and then you stand on your leg and you can't.
But to me, what's worse is the exact opposite. And this is one that I made you watch. It's one of the few ones that I want to like, gauge your reaction to. So I know you've got it pulled up on our separate computer.
We're gonna watch this one again because
and this individual is notorious for not letting go of submissions. And so much so that they were kicked out of the UFC for it, essentially. And this is Huzamar Palhares, and the match I'm talking about specifically actually happened in jiu-jitsu, and it's his 80cc match against David Avellan. I think that's how you say his last name.
We're not sure.
A really underrated grappler.
Yeah, we're going to watch this one here, and I think that was one of the things, it's like, man, he gets up on these things quick, and he doesn't let go.
So they're almost out of bounds here. And Huzamar gets the heel hook here. David spins, he taps, and then Huzamar, like, actually basically, like, he does a full another roll with the heel hook.
So what's funny about this one, too, though, is, like, the referee put his hands on him, like, stopping them, right? And then Huzamar doesn't stop, and the guy taps, but the referee had already, like, basically stopped the match at that point. So that's kind of, like, this is very controversial if, like, you watch it again. But, and then he just cranks it and goes again on it, and it's nasty. And that's like,
I mean, this guy's notorious for this. This is a problem that this guy has. And to me, what's even weirder about it and worse about it is, like, afterwards, the guy's, like, clearly pissed. He's like, shoves him, you know, like he's arguing with the referee. And Huzamar twice hugs him, but when he hugs him, I don't know if you noticed it or not, he pats him hard.
I'll watch it.
Hard as hell on the back.
Yeah. He's trying to hug him.
It's like, pat, pat. Shout out to Moose Shock, king of the pat, pat hugs.
Yeah. He's got a nice back slap.
And this was the year, like, Huzamar was in the finals with Galvao, and Galvao took him out. And that was like, he had...
But that's the thing that sucks is, like, this guy, like, this is what's messed up about it is, like, this guy is not somebody you ever want to fight because you can't, like, even if you're in a bad way, like, he's not going to let go and he's not going to respect the rules of the game, you know?
Arguably that, like, you could make the argument, and this is kind of what happened with UFC, where it's like, you violate that kind of trust so many times.
Yeah.
And you can't be allowed because it's an advantage. Because it's like, do you want to fight Huzamar? Like,
then also, it's like that exactly. It's like, who's taking those fights? And then, you know, you take that fight, like, knowing...
running the risk of, like, this guy might not stop.
And then that's in your head, like, the whole time, right? So then you don't fight.
To me, that was what was baller about when Gary Tonon fought him in the UK in Palhares. Because Gary just completely outclassed him, but also, like, you know, gave up a ton of weight.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Gary Tonon.
Yeah.
So, you know, this one comes from the world of MMA, and to me, this is, like, one of the saddest ones. So, you know, the Huzamar, Palhares, David Avellan match is sad because you don't want to see a competitor be mean-spirited. Even if, like, I don't know what the deal is.
I want to see dub submissions, but I don't want you to be a dick.
And in this case, it's it's sad and very respectful at the same time. And this is Frank Mir versus Antonio Nogueira.
Yeah.
Minotauro. And what to me was so sad is like Minotauro like raised the flag for jiu-jitsu for so long in MMA, especially at heavyweight, taking on all comers, fighting Bob Sapp and Fedor, and he fights Frank Mir, who is accomplished in jiu-jitsu, but not really the same way.
And also just like really a very generally douchey person. So
I like Frank.
I mean, I'm not saying that he's like douchey people are still likable.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if douchey people weren't likable, we'd have to get rid of 50% of our friends in jiu-jitsu.
That's probably true.
Jeez.
Okay.
Shout out to Joey Walters. But Frank Mir caught Antonio Nogueira in a Kimura, and I just remember it like getting bent behind his back and being like, "No, please stop!"
No, don't,
and just
don't,
knowing
don't.
that he wasn't going to, and it being one of those ones where it's like you watch the shoulder go like click, bam, like, and just that's one.
Most of the time, this is me. Like when we're watching stuff, and I know that this stuff's gonna happen, and it's bad, and I'm just like, Tyler, tell me when it's over, and then I'll watch the replay because I feel like there's something about the replay that is easier for me to handle, like mentally and physically. Like I'm like not gonna react.
I always think it's funny, like in MMA, whenever they're like watching the replay and they're interviewing him after the fight, and they're like, "Walk us through this," and it's like one of those ones where like something dislocates, and then you just hear the entire like crowd in the stadium who's now seeing it close because when it's happening live, you really can't tell, and they watch it super zoomed in. They're like, "Oh,
yeah,"
and that's how I felt in person watching that one.
Yeah, that was nasty.
Another one that sticks out to me, and this one's like kind of different from all the others because a lot of these are brutal from the standpoint that they are like dislocations, they're like disfigurements almost,
Yeah.
This one to me was particularly like brutal because of just how it happened and just it was like the person was like unconscious like that, and that is Queixinho and
Marcio Andre. Yeah, because what Marcio was winning, right? He was winning the match. It was the very end of the match too.
Yeah, and
then they were on the feet again, and Queixinho just like jumped on this loop choke like from the feet, and like
it was in a single leg, and he kind of like hopped into it,
and then like. It looked brutal. Like, it looked like, it's like, like, when you get choked, and sometimes it's like, it's a clean choke, not whatever, but it's like, it looked like it was, like, kind of cranking his neck a little bit, like, the gi was, like, around the neck almost, like, just brutal, like, that you're going to feel that.
About it.
Yeah, it's like, you're going to feel it. And then, like, he lets go, and Marcio just, like, limp. And, like, that, I'm just like, oh, man. And especially just, I think, the nature of it, where it's, like, you have somebody that's kind of, like, old guard versus new guard, and then like the old guard can like pull out like this like magic at the end of the match. It's just like kind of like really kind of just cool.
It looked nasty, but then you were like, is he gonna be all right? And then it's just like, no, he's not all right. He's unconscious.
No, he's done. He's out.
Yeah, it was surprising too at the time because Marcio Andre, like I think it was right around the time that he beat Cobrinha at the Worlds, and that was like a big deal. And so the last one that I'll throw out there is fairly recent. It's another female match, so we'll begin and end with female matches. And this might be one of the worst, like in terms of like just painful looking submissions I've ever seen. And that was Bia Mesquita and Fiona Davis from ADCC this year.
Yeah, that one was brutal.
It was an armbar, right?
Well, because she had her in a triangle. Right? It started as a triangle, and then she started attacking the arm, and Bia was, like, defending, and you watch her arm, like, just, like, dislocate, like, go out, and it's just, like, there's nothing, she had it so deep, and it was nasty.
There's sometimes and this happens in practice sometimes, too, where the momentum of the match, like, if you catch a submission, like, right as you're transitioning, the momentum sometimes will make the submission particularly painful.
Yeah.
Like, it's happened to most. I would say, like, you train jiu-jitsu long enough, you're going to be in a situation where you're like, moving, and you get caught in an armbar, and your arm is straight, but yet you can't really tap because you're, like, in transition. And, And if you just so happen to be transitioning in a way to where you're going one way, and they're going the other, your arm is in the middle.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what happened here.
Yeah. It was, I don't even know. I don't have words for it because it's just, like... Oh my God, that looked awful. It looks painful. And you know what's funny? Because it's like most of the time, like if you get caught in a heel hook like that, like let's go back to like some like the Vinny matches, like you get your knee popped, like you know how most time like if your knee pops or whatever, you're like, huh, you kind of freak out because you're like, it popped, it shouldn't do that, like, but there's no pain with it. It's like almost it just scares you, and then you're like, oh crap, and then you sit there. And how many times have you been on the mat where you're like, I don't know if it's hurt, like hold on, just give me a second, like I don't know.
Well, if your knee pops,
like,
here's the thing: you're good to train the rest of that day.
Yes, and I've had that happen too. Like, but that one, like, there's certain things like, and I think most of the time with your elbow, where it's like there is pain, like initially with it, and then the pain might subside. But like I don't know. But if your arm is bent the other way, when something dislocates like that, it's like there's like that freaking out. Like somebody has got to put this back or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Like
I mean, having had all my fingers dislocated so many times.
Oh my god! Like that's a perfect example because your finger will dislocate, and you've always told me like it's not as much as the pain. Is it like my like joint is below? It's like behind my finger or whatever.
It's more
it's
the
like,
squeamish part of it, where it's like I can see the other people's reactions to it, and I feel like the way that they react to it, it's like we feel the same thing.
Yeah.
Like the actual pain is like, I would say, like while I'm not advocating it, like I don't know, it's not as painful as things that happen. I would say on an almost daily basis training jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's more so that you look down at your hand, and you're like, why is my one finger an inch shorter than the other one?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think that entire division this year at ADCC was bad because Fiona went on to fight Bianca and then had to be carried off as well.
Yeah, because that was a brutal toehold too.
That was
by Bia Basilio.
That was your division at ADCC, and that whole division ended up being like a car accident. I mean, just everybody was getting it was brutal. The women I would say the women in a lot of cases are more savage than the men.
Oh yeah. I would say that for sure. Because I feel like, I don't know, like this is maybe I'm biased, but I think in a lot of ways women kind of go for it a little bit more with like less ego about just like out pointing their person.
I also feel like the distance between women in terms of like skill level, like there's a lot of tough dudes out there, but they just, for whatever reason, will never make the podium, or you might not ever hearing about them. They don't compete. With women, it's very different, where it's like, if you're competing in ADCC as a woman, like, there's not many others that are really where you're at in terms of, like, even in the academy, you know? And I feel like in those situations, what happens is, like, you're willing to push it a little bit further because it's, like, you don't have any practice fighting somebody that's, like, even in a lot of cases. You know what I mean?
You're either fighting men that are bigger and stronger, if you're fighting women, it's very. The only time you get to fight women, really, I mean, for me, like at my like level, is when I'm competing against them.
And women often, like I've heard this before, but like women will have higher pain tolerances naturally,
for sure,
and that's partially like a pregnancy thing or something. I don't know.
You don't need to like try and pretend like you know, like
I'm a scientist.
How we are biology.
I'm a scientist. I have a communications degree from Lindenwood University.
You don't understand our anatomy and our feelings. So anyway, yes. But I do say that we do generally have a higher pain tolerance than men.
I will say, like, one of the things that like sticks out in all of these is there's not a single one of these that happens where the competitor, like, that this submission happens to is basically just, like, not more upset that they lost the match.
I think that's why it's so... I don't know, like we can talk about these ones and just be like, this is like really like baller on their part in a lot of ways, or crazy, or like you just whatever about it, because you know there's you just see the level of competitor that this person is. Like you're just at a different level, because if you can be more upset, like, and that's how I have been. Anytime I've gotten submitted or I get hurt in a match or training, I'm not upset that I got hurt. I'm not upset at anything. I'm like, I'm mad that I lost, or I'm mad that like I won't be able to train more or whatever. It's like that I made that mistake. It's like I'm not mad at them. I'm not mad at anything. I'm mad at myself for allowing that to happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing I would say to take away from this, which I think we did a good job of doing, which is like this is not like mocking anybody that was on the receiving end of these things. It's definitely a hat tip, because if you were in one of these situations, is because the stakes are at the highest, and like these types of situations don't happen often, and part of the reason why it's happening is because both people are so fierce.
Yeah. And we're not going to talk about the things that happen like at like a lower level or in meaningless tournaments.
They're like, oh, I didn't have a blue belt and got both my arms broken. It's like, well, stop being stupid. Guess what?
Now you're going to have tendonitis for the rest of your life, and it's going to suck. Yeah. Believe me.
If you're a black belt and you don't have tendonitis in your elbow, I'd be surprised.
It's true. That's true.
If you got like a good neck, and both your elbows are fine, like I'm like, what are you even doing? Are you even training?
Or lower back.
Lower back. My lower back's fine, but I don't know. I feel like
But it's not like your lower back. It's actually your hip flexors just being tight all the time.
I feel like knees, shoulders, elbows, neck, and...
just, all your joints.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, like, think about it. Every day, like, I wake up and you've been training a lot, and your hands, like, they feel like they're like this. And it hurts, and it's swollen, and, like, my fingers hurt. Like, the tips of my fingers hurt. And I feel like sometimes I just want to run them under cold water just to like...
Yeah, it makes them feel good.
Yeah.
I had a doctor...
just to be a person.
I had a doctor convinced that I had rheumatoid arthritis because of the way my hands look. So we did x-rays, and he's like, turns out you don't have rheumatoid arthritis, but you have the worst arthritis I've ever seen from a 30-year-old man. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, your fingers, they have this spongy bone on the outside. And I was like, how does that work? And he's like, I don't know. Like, what do you do? And I was like...
Surprisingly enough, like, my fingers look pretty terrible, but I thought I broke one of my fingers a while back, and I got an x-ray on it, and I remember talking to my chiropractor, and he's like, I'm really shocked that there's, like, not more arthritis in your hands. So, well, I don't know. I guess maybe sometimes they look bad, and then they're so great.
Well, you don't have to brag. Some of us have the worst arthritis for a 30-year-old
kind of a superhero.
A doctor's ever seen.
But I feel like the same thing happened about your knees when you got them MRI'd. Yeah. You have the knees of a 55-year-old dude. You're 26.
Well, no, it was more like, well, your meniscus is torn, but you know that because you don't have an ACL. It's like, no, doc, it's actually the other knee that doesn't have an ACL. And they're like,
oh, well, no ACLs.
Well, turns out, I mean, it's like anything, 3 out of 4 is fine.
Just turns out. So you're the weak human, and I am the strong, superior person.
It's true. It's true. So we want to thank everybody for joining us on Not Fighting. All the positive reviews, all the opportunities that you've taken to share your thoughts with us, comment, subscribe on our YouTube channel.
Subscribe.
Comic?
Did I say comic? Comment.
But all these things are really helpful, and we really appreciate those that are patronizing the show by liking it, commenting it, joining, watching, all that kind of stuff. And so we'd love more participation. We have if you go to not-fighting.com, there's a phone number on there. You can either text us or leave us a voicemail if you have thoughts on the show. If there's a brutal submission that we left out, leave it in the comments. We'll address it on our next podcast, promise. And
we're not going to make any promises. Like, hopefully, we'll get to it.
Yeah. So, promise that we will read it.
Yes. Yeah. Totally.
So, there's that.
Yep.
Terms and conditions. All right. We want to thank everybody for joining us on
Thanks, guys.
Well,
oh.
Another episode of Not Fighting.